Greetings, YouTube. Divide and conquer. An axiom so old it predates our entire species. Wolves use it. The idea that it's easier to defeat an enemy when you can get one part of it isolated than when you can take on the entire enemy at once. Probably the military axiom that has won more battles than any other in the history of warfare. So why do I bring it up today? I bring it up today because whenever I hear about the latest round of state level and county level laws, I'm reminded of that axiom. Now, the ideal when our nation was founded was that state rights were about experimentations in democracy. In theory, because we have 50 states, we would have 50 small laboratories to experiment with democracy. And then whatever shakes out and works best would be adopted by other states purely because it would make the most sense. And that is a lovely ideal. Truly it is. One that I applaud. However, there's never been many cases in our history where an ideal makes it to where the rubber meets the road. And the reality is that state rights in practice are not even vaguely close to the ideal. And they have been used repeatedly in the past to oppress minorities because the bigots knew that they would not be able to oppress them on a national scale. They would not be able to get amendments passed across America. So they decided that they would rather go after things on the state level, which has a much lower bar to achieve their bigoted, discriminatory ends. And of course, the most famous example I can think of is Loving versus Virginia, where the case that broke the back of the state rights issues that said that states could decide whether a white person and a black person could marry. And we are seeing that again today in our world, where certain states have decided that they would ban the ability for same-sex couples to get married. Now, the scale has tipped. I believe that we're at 30 or 31 states where it's now legal, though most of those have been settled by court cases as opposed to through legislation. And this is the way it's supposed to work. The court system is supposed to help minority groups defend themselves from the oppression of the majority. That's the way it's supposed to function. Oh, and before I go any further, I received a comment today about someone saying that they felt that I should speak out against minority groups that boycott discriminatory businesses. So let me make this explicitly clear. When a minority group is trying to fight for its rights against the oppression of a majority, it is not the same thing as that oppressive majority crushing the rights of a minority group. These are not morally equivalent things. The majority group that is trying to remove, contain, or prevent minority groups from having equal access to the law and to the privileges that everyone else enjoys is inherently evil. Whereas the minority group that is attempting to achieve equality is on the side of the gods, if you'd like to use that turn of phrase, or at least on the side of the righteous. Because when you're fighting for your own rights, when you're fighting to try to make sure that everyone has representation, that is a positive. And that is why I am a liberal progressive. That is why I'm a feminist. So don't try that argument with me. I'll be intrigued to see if the person that made that comment recognizes themselves. This is one of the reasons I oppose state rights. And a great example here just happened in Alabama. In fact, someone about 10 minutes ago sent me a link to it because I had done a video about this in 2011, and the law in question had just passed in Alabama because it had been tried in a number of different states. And that is that Alabama passed a law making it illegal in Alabama to establish Sharia law. Now, apparently, people in Alabama have never read the Constitution. Because if they'd read the Constitution, they would have understood that it's illegal to impose sectarian law in America. Period. It doesn't matter the source of that sectarian law. It's still illegal. So it's illegal to establish Jewish sectarian law, Buddhist sectarian law, Christian sectarian law, or Islamic sectarian law. So this is an absolute waste of time. It was a waste of money, of effort. It could have been, all that effort could have been placed on laws that actually benefit people in the real world. But what this law did succeed at, it told the Islamic community in Alabama, we don't want you. Because this law is about bigotry and prejudice and discrimination. This law is not about protecting Alabamians from living under the yoke of Sharia law. That's one of the things I think is great about America, because we have something on the books that says sectarian law cannot be imposed. It's awesome. Sectarian law should always be fought. Everywhere. Now, that's a waste of time. And an act of discrimination. So it's a law that we didn't need. But it's an example of how state rights are being used to give a message to the minority group in that state that they are not wanted. Because you never get a constitutional amendment on, or a law on the national level, on the federal level, banning Sharia law, because there isn't any need for one. And other examples, of course, are all of the wonderful things that have led us to Citizens United, to corporate personhood, to unlimited amounts of money in politics, to corporations being able to own politicians outright. I still think we should require politicians to be tattooed with all the people that donate money to them. Now I'm opposed to any corporation donating money to politicians. I'm opposed to any individual donating large amounts of dark money, regardless of whether they're liberals or conservatives. I don't care. It's inherently undermining democracy. I heard a wonderful idea recently, I think it was this last weekend, where someone was suggesting that all the money that people want to donate to politics would go into one pool. So it's public funding. So everyone who wants to donate money could, but it all goes into one pot. And then that pot is divided evenly amongst all eligible voters. And the voters can say, okay, I've got $150 in my pot, in my donation account. Then they can donate that money to the politicians they want to see get it. So the American people would decide who gets funding for their campaigns. So the politicians would have to appease us, not a group of individuals, which I think is less than 1,000 or less than 500 of the really big donors. Yeah, I think it's like 430 something of really big donors in America. And that's it. Those are the people who decide politics in America. And that's wrong. We should be deciding politics in America. The voters. So I love this idea. But this is why I oppose strong states' rights. Because they are used by corporations, by the oligarchs, by the bigots, against us. Now, if states' rights were the ideal, awesome. But they aren't. And the practical application of them in America has been nothing but a long history of oppression and exploitation. And we need to fix that. So yes, this does make me inherently opposed to the Libertarian Party. Big surprise there for anyone that's watched my channel for a while. I don't like state rights. Because every time I think of it, I see crowds of white people holding signs up, telling black people they aren't wanted, that they can't go to their schools, that they can't marry, that they shouldn't be able to vote. And then I jump forward to the 21st century and I see signs where Christians are telling the gay community they aren't welcome and they can't marry. They shouldn't be allowed to hold jobs. What I see is bigotry, discrimination, and exploitation. I see ugliness. I see an ideal tarnished. And I think we need to do something to make sure that we end that.